The fluorescent lights of Westbridge Academy's hallway flickered slightly as Madison Chen kept her eyes fixed on the scuffed linoleum floor, her worn sneakers making soft squeaking sounds with each hesitant step. She clutched her second-hand backpack tighter against her chest, using it as a shield between herself and the world that seemed determined to remind her she didn't belong here. The prestigious private school towered around her with its marble columns and oil paintings of distinguished alumni, a constant monument to wealth and privilege that made her feel smaller with each passing day. Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence again. The voice cut through Madison's thoughts like a knife through silk. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. Victoria Ashford. Daughter of Richard Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries, one of the largest tech conglomerates in the country. Victoria's father's face was on magazine covers, his company's logo on half the devices in the school. And Victoria never let anyone forget it. Madison's fingers tightened around the straps of her backpack as she tried to sidestep around Victoria and her entourage of perfectly coiffed followers. But Victoria moved with her, blocking her path with the precision of someone who had made an art form out of cruelty. "I'm talking to you, scholarship girl," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness that made Madison's stomach twist. "It's rude to ignore people. Didn't they teach you manners wherever you came from?" The hallway seemed to grow quieter, or maybe Madison's ears were just ringing. She could feel eyes on her, dozens of them, students stopping their conversations to watch the familiar scene unfold. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked away. No one intervened. They never did. Not when it came to Victoria Ashford. I need to get to class," Madison managed to whisper, her voice barely audible even to herself. Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Did you hear that, girls? She needs to get to class. So dedicated. So studious." She took a step closer, and Madison could smell her expensive perfume, something that probably cost more than Madison's mother made in a month. "Tell me, Madison, how does it feel knowing you're only here because the school needed to fill their poverty quota? Does it keep you up at night, knowing you're just a charity case?" Madison's cheeks burned red. Her throat felt tight, like she was trying to swallow around a stone. She wanted to say something, anything. She wanted to tell Victoria that she'd earned her place here with straight A's and test scores that outranked half the school. She wanted to mention that while Victoria was struggling to maintain a C average, Madison was taking advanced placement courses that Victoria's father's money couldn't buy her way into. But the words wouldn't come. They never did. Because deep down, a small, poisonous part of Madison believed Victoria might be right. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. "What's wrong?" Victoria continued, circling Madison like a predator. "Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you're just not used to talking to people who matter. I mean, let's be honest, where you come from, people probably communicate in grunts in." "That's enough, Victoria." The new voice was quiet but carried an authority that made Victoria pause mid-sentence. Madison looked up for the first time and saw Olivia Park standing a few feet away, her arms crossed over her chest. Olivia was new, she'd only been at Westbridge for a few weeks, and she kept to herself mostly, speaking only when called on in class, eating lunch alone in the library. Madison had noticed her because they seemed to share the same strategy for survival, invisibility. Victoria turned to face this unexpected interruption, her perfectly shaped eyebrows raised in amusement. "I'm sorry, who are you again?" "Oh right, the new girl. The one who sits in the back and doesn't say a word. Tell me, are you trying to collect a set? Is there some kind of losers club you two are starting?" Olivia didn't flinch. Her dark eyes remained steady, focused on Victoria with an intensity that seemed to make the air in the hallway feel heavier. "I said, that's enough." For a moment, just a fraction of a second, something flickered across Victoria's face. Uncertainty, maybe. Or recognition. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual mask of entitled superiority. Or what? Victoria challenged, stepping away from Madison and toward Olivia. What are you going to do about it? Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea who my father is? Olivia's expression didn't change. I know exactly who your father is. And I know exactly who you are. The question is, do you know who I am? The hallway had gone completely silent now. Even Victoria's followers seemed uncertain, exchanging glances with each other. There was something in Olivia's tone, not threatening, exactly, but absolute. Like she was stating a fact rather than issuing a challenge. Victoria laughed, but it sounded forced. You're nobody. Just like her. She gestured dismissively at Madison. Just another. My name is Olivia Park, she interrupted, taking a single step forward. And I'm going to give you one chance to apologize to Madison and walk away. One chance, Victoria. I suggest you take it. Victoria's face flushed an angry red that clashed with her designer blouse. The corridor seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Madison found herself frozen in place, unable to process what was happening. No one stood up to Victoria Ashford. No one. The girl's father could make or break careers with a phone call. Her family's donations kept half the school's programs running. She was untouchable. Are you threatening me? Victoria's voice rose, attracting even more attention. Students were pulling out their phones now, sensing something worth recording. Do you have any idea what my father will do when I tell him some random nobody threatened his daughter? You'll be out of his school so fast. 30 seconds, Olivia said calmly, glancing at her watch, a simple, elegant piece that Madison noticed didn't bear any obvious luxury brand logo. You have 30 seconds to apologize, Victoria. After that, things are going to change very quickly. Victoria's laugh was shrill now, tinged with genuine anger rather than her usual performative cruelty. You're insane. You know that? Completely. 20 seconds. Something in Olivia's voice made Madison's skin prickle. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't even particularly emphatic. But there was a certainty there, a quiet confidence that seemed out of place for a teenage girl standing up to the school's most powerful bully. This is ridiculous, Victoria sputtered, looking to her friends for support. They were shifting uncomfortably now, no longer meeting her eyes. You can't just. 10 seconds. Fine. Victoria snapped. You want to play this game? Let's play. I'm calling my father right now. We'll see how tough you are when you're being escorted off school property by security. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Daddy? Yes, it's me. You need to come to the school right now. Some girl is threatening me in. Time's up, Olivia said softly. She pulled out her own phone and typed a single message. Hit send. Then she looked back at Victoria with something that might have been pity. You should have apologized. Victoria was still talking into her phone, her voice getting louder and more agitated. I don't care if you're in a meeting. This is important. She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening as she stared past Olivia, through the hallway windows that looked out onto the school's circular driveway. Madison followed her gaze and felt her own breath catch in her throat. Black SUVs. 3 of them. No, 4. 5. They were pulling up to the school entrance in perfect formation, their tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun like dark mirrors. They weren't just expensive vehicles, they were the kind of cars you saw in movies, the kind that screamed federal importance or corporate power that made even Richard Ashford's wealth look quaint. The hallway erupted in whispers. Students crowded the windows, phones recording everything. Victoria's face had gone pale, her phone slowly dropping from her ear. Madison could hear her father's voice coming through the speaker, tinny and distant. Victoria? Victoria, what's going on? Victoria! The SUV's doors opened simultaneously, and men and women in dark suits emerged. They moved with military precision, spreading out around the school entrance. 2 of them walked toward the main doors, speaking into earpieces. One of them held what looked like an official document folder. What? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper now. What did you do? Olivia slipped her phone back into her pocket. I gave you a chance. You didn't take it. She looked at Madison then, and her expression softened. Are you okay? Madison couldn't speak. She could only nod, her mind reeling. What was happening? Who was Olivia Park? The main doors opened, and Vice Principal Henderson came rushing into the hallway, his usually composed face flushed and confused. Olivia Park, he called out, looking around frantically. Is there an Olivia Park here? He spotted her and hurried over, slightly out of breath. Mississippi Park, there are people here to see you. Very official people. They say it's urgent. I know, Olivia said calmly. I called them. Henderson's eyes widened. You called them? But they said they were from, he lowered his voice, glancing around at the crowd of students. They said they're from the Department of Justice. And there's a woman who identified herself as being from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And someone from Mississippi Park. Who exactly are you? Before Olivia could answer, one of the suited figures appeared at the end of the hallway. She was a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, carrying herself with an authority that made Vice Principal Henderson look like a nervous undergraduate. She walked straight toward them, her eyes fixed on Olivia. Mississippi Park, the woman said, her voice crisp and professional. We received your message. The situation is being handled. Thank you, Director Chen, Olivia replied. Madison's head snapped toward Olivia. Chen? Had she said Chen? The woman's eyes flickered to Madison, and something in her expression shifted, became warmer, more personal. Madison, she said softly. Hello, sweetheart. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Madison stared at the woman, at her angular features, her dark eyes, the way she held herself. Features that Madison saw every time she looked in a mirror. Features that belonged to the mother she thought was working double shifts as a hotel housekeeper across town. Mom? The word came out strangled, confused. I don't understand. Director Sarah Chen, because that's who she apparently was, not Sarah Chen the housekeeper but Director Sarah Chen of some federal agency, took a step toward Madison, her professional mask cracking to reveal concern. Madison, honey, I know this is confusing. I promise I'll explain everything, but right now. You're a hotel housekeeper, Madison said, her voice rising despite her usual quiet nature. The shock was overriding everything else, the embarrassment, the fear, even Victoria's presence. You work at the Grand Marriott downtown. You leave for work at 5 in the morning and come home smelling like industrial cleaner. You don't. She gestured helplessly at the suit, the badges, the armed agents visible through the windows. I work in national security, her mother said gently. I have for 15 years. The housekeeping job was cover, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you. The nature of my work requires lying to your daughter. Madison felt tears burning behind her eyes. Letting her think they were poor. Letting her come to this school on a scholarship she didn't even need while everyone treated her like. The scholarship was necessary, Sarah interrupted, her voice firm but kind. If anyone had known about my real position, about our real situation, you would have been a target. You already are, which is why Olivia is here. She looked at the girl who'd been sitting quietly in the back of Madison's classes for weeks. Thank you for the alert. I got here as fast as I could. Madison turned to Olivia, comprehension slowly dawning. You've been watching me. This whole time. You're not even really a student, are you? Olivia had the grace to look slightly apologetic. I'm 18, and I am technically enrolled. But you're right, I'm here as your protection detail. Your mother requested it after several security assessments indicated potential threats. Protection from what? Madison demanded. But even as she asked, she was starting to understand. The pieces were clicking into place like a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving. Her mother's odd hours. The way they'd moved 3 times in 5 years. The fact that their apartment was bland and anonymous, with no family photos, no personal touches. The burner phones her mother kept in a locked drawer that Madison had once found and been told never to touch. "From people who might want to hurt you to get to me," Sarah said quietly. "I've made a lot of enemies in my line of work, Madison. I've taken down human trafficking rings, exposed corporate espionage, dismantled organizations that most people don't even know exist. I kept you in the dark because I thought that was the safest option. I thought if you genuinely believed we were ordinary, if you lived as an ordinary girl from an ordinary background, then you'd be beneath notice." But someone noticed anyway, Olivia added, her eyes moving to Victoria, who had gone very quiet and very pale. "Someone's been asking questions about Madison. Digging into her background, her mother's background. Questions that triggered alarms at very high levels of government." Victoria backed up a step, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I didn't." "Not you," Olivia said. "You're just a spoiled bully with too much money and too little supervision. But your father." She pulled out her phone, swiped a few times, then turned the screen toward Victoria. "Your father's company has been under investigation for 6 months. Corporate espionage, specifically. Stealing classified technology from competitors who hold government contracts. Contracts that Director Chen's department oversees." Victoria's face went from pale to gray. "That's not, my father wouldn't." 3 weeks ago, Sarah Chen said, her voice taking on a formal, almost detached quality, "Richard Ashford hired a private investigation firm to look into my daughter. He wanted leverage. Something he could use to pressure me into burying the investigation into his company. What he didn't realize is that my department monitors all inquiries into my family with extreme prejudice." Madison felt like she was watching this happen to someone else. Her mother, her quiet, tired mother who smelled like bleach and industrial soap, was speaking with an authority that commanded the entire hallway. Students who had been whispering went silent. Even the teachers who had started to gather looked uncertain about whether they should intervene. When Olivia reported Victoria's behavior this morning, Sarah continued, including her very specific questions about Madison's home life, her mother's employer, and whether Madison had any other family members, questions that Victoria shouldn't have been asking unless someone had prompted her to. "We knew we had a problem. Daddy just asked me to be friendly," Victoria whispered, tears starting to stream down her carefully made-up face. "He said to find out more about the scholarship girl, to see if maybe her mom knew anyone at the school board. He said it was just networking. He said to gather intelligence on a federal director through her minor child." Sarah's voice was cold now. "Which is witness tampering, intimidation, and about 6 other federal crimes I can charge him with." She nodded to one of the agents by the door. "Richard Ashford is being taken into custody as we speak. His office is being searched. His computers, his files, his phone records, all of it." The hallway erupted then. Students pulled out phones, frantically texting and posting. Teachers tried to restore order. Vice Principal Henderson looked like he might faint. But Madison could only stare at her mother, this stranger in a familiar face, and try to process the fact that her entire life had been a lie. And somehow, impossibly, Victoria Ashford, who had made every day at this school a living hell, was crying openly now, her perfect facade completely shattered. The principal's office had never felt so small. Madison sat in one of the leather chairs across from Principal Morrison's massive oak desk, her mother standing beside her like a sentinel. Olivia was there too, positioned near the door with the casual alertness of someone trained to assess threats. Principal Morrison himself looked like he'd aged 10 years in the last 30 minutes, his face drawn and pale as he tried to process the federal agents currently occupying his school. "Director Chen," he began, his voice strained, "I assure you that Westbridge Academy has always maintained the strictest confidentiality regarding our scholarship students. If there was any breach of Madison's privacy, I can promise you it didn't come from our staff." "I know it didn't," Sarah said, her tone marginally softer than it had been in the hallway. Your school's discretion is one of the reasons I felt comfortable enrolling Madison here. The breach came from outside, from someone with resources and motivation to dig where they shouldn't have been digging. Morrison nodded, relief flickering across his features before being replaced by concern. And Victoria Ashford? Her father was one of our largest donors. The new science wing, the athletic complex renovation, the scholarship fund itself. He trailed off, realizing too late how that might sound. The scholarship fund that my daughter doesn't actually need? Madison's mother raised an eyebrow. Yes, I'm aware of the irony. But the scholarship was necessary for her cover. Speaking of which. She turned to Madison, and her expression shifted from Director Chen to just Mom, worried, apologetic, and sad. We need to talk about what happens next. Madison had been silent since they'd left the hallway, her mind still reeling. Now she found her voice, thin and fragile. Are we leaving? Moving again? That depends on you, Sarah said, pulling up a chair so she could sit facing her daughter. Your cover is compromised now. Everyone in this school is going to know who I really am by the end of the day. The story will be all over social media within the hour. There were too many students recording for us to contain it. Which means continuing to pretend you're just a normal scholarship student isn't an option anymore. Was I ever normal? Madison asked, and the bitterness in her own voice surprised her. This whole time, you let me think we were struggling. You let me feel ashamed of our apartment, our clothes, the fact that I couldn't afford the class trip to Washington, D.C. last year. You let Victoria and everyone like her make me feel small because I was poor. But we're not poor, are we? Sarah's face crumpled slightly. No, sweetheart. We're not poor. I make a substantial salary. We could afford a house in the best neighborhood, designer clothes, everything those other kids have. But every luxury would be a thread that someone could pull, a way to trace back to who I really am and what I really do. I chose your safety over your comfort, and I know that doesn't feel fair. It's not fair, Madison interrupted, surprised by her own boldness. Years of being quiet, of making herself small, were cracking under the weight of this revelation. Do you know what it's like to count out lunch money in coins while Victoria Ashford walks by with a designer purse that costs more than our monthly rent? Do you know what it's like to hear her call me a charity case and not be able to defend myself because I believed her? I know, Sarah said softly. And if I could take that pain away, I would. But Madison, the alternative was making you a target. The people I've put in prison, the organizations I've dismantled, they don't play fair. They go after families. They hurt children to hurt their parents. I've seen it happen to colleagues who weren't careful enough. I couldn't let that happen to you. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. So you sent Olivia to babysit me instead? Madison glanced at the other girl, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. How long were you planning to keep that up? Were you going to follow me to college too? Watch me from the shadows for my entire life? Olivia spoke up for the first time since they'd entered the office. For what it's worth, I wasn't supposed to intervene today. My orders were observation only. But when Victoria started in on you in the hallway, and I saw the patterns I'd been briefed about, the specific questions she'd been asking you over the past week, the way she was escalating, I made a judgment call. I thought she might be fishing for information to report back to her father. Were you right? Madison asked. Yes, Sarah answered. Richard Ashford had been coaching his daughter to befriend you, to find out details about our home life, my schedule, anything that might give him leverage. When that didn't work, when you were too shy to open up to his daughter's sudden interest, he told Victoria to try a different approach. To push you, to see if you'd say something in anger or fear that he could use. Madison felt sick. So even the bullying was calculated? It wasn't just Victoria being cruel for fun, her father was encouraging it. Victoria has been cruel on her own for years, Principal Morrison interjected quietly. I've received complaints from other students and parents. But we could never prove anything definitive, and her father's lawyers were very persuasive about protecting her reputation. I'm ashamed to say we looked the other way more often than we should have. That ends today, Sarah said firmly. Victoria Ashford will face consequences for her actions. Real consequences, not just a slap on the wrist because her father writes checks. And Richard Ashford will face federal charges for his attempts to manipulate and intimidate a government official through her child. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of the agents, a tall man with graying temples and a serious expression, stepped inside. Director, we've completed the preliminary sweep of the school. No additional threats detected. Richard Ashford is in custody downtown. His attorneys are already making noise, but the evidence is solid. We found communications on his personal phone that explicitly reference Madison and strategies for extracting information through his daughter. Sarah nodded. Thank you, Agent Rodriguez. Have the team begin standing down the perimeter, but keep 2 vehicles on site until we're ready to transport. Transport? Madison's head snapped up. Transport where? Home, her mother said. Or what's been serving as home. We need to have a longer conversation about what our life looks like going forward, and we should do that somewhere more private than the principal's office. She stood, extending a hand toward Madison. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get out of here. Madison didn't move. What about school? My classes? I have a calculus test tomorrow and a paper due in English on Friday. Principal Morrison cleared his throat. Miss Chen, Madison, please don't worry about your coursework right now. Under the circumstances, I think we can arrange for some flexibility with your academic requirements. Your teachers will understand. But I don't want flexibility, Madison said, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. I worked hard in those classes. I earned those grades myself, without any help from whoever my mother really is. They're mine. I don't want special treatment just because suddenly everyone knows I'm not actually the poor scholarship kid. A small smile crossed Sarah's face, sad but proud. You earned those grades with your own intelligence and hard work. Nothing about that changes. But Madison, the media is going to be camped outside this school in about 20 minutes. The story of a federal director's daughter being targeted through a private school bullying scheme? That's going to be national news. I'm trying to get you out of here before the news vans arrive. As if on cue, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and looked up. Too late. 3 news vans just pulled into the parking lot. Local affiliates, but they're already setting up cameras. Someone must have tipped them off, probably one of the students who recorded the hallway incident. Madison felt a flutter of panic in her chest. The hallway had been bad enough, with students she knew staring and whispering. But cameras? Reporters? The whole world knowing about her humiliation, her mother's lies, everything? I can't, she whispered. I can't go out there. Everyone will see me, everyone will know. Hey. Olivia moved from her post by the door, crouching down beside Madison's chair so they were at eye level. Listen to me. Those reporters aren't interested in you being bullied. That's not the story. The story is that a corrupt CEO tried to intimidate a federal director and got caught. The story is that justice is being served. You're not the victim here, you're the reason a bad guy is going to prison. Olivia's right, Sarah added, kneeling on Madison's other side. I know this feels overwhelming. I know you're angry with me, you have every right to be. But you are not weak, Madison. You never were. You survived 3 years at this school thinking you had nothing, thinking you had to make yourself invisible just to get by. But you didn't just survive, you excelled. You made honor roll every semester. You scored higher on your SATs than 90% of the students here. You did all of that while carrying a burden that wasn't yours to carry. Madison felt tears threatening again, but this time they were different. Not tears of shame or fear, but something more complicated. Anger, yes. Betrayal, definitely. But also, relief? The weight of pretending to be someone she wasn't, of believing she was less than everyone around her, that weight was gone. She didn't have to be small anymore. "I want to go home," she said finally. "But not to hide. I want to go home so we can talk. Really talk. About everything. About who you really are, what you really do, why you made the choices you made." And then she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders. "Then I want to come back to school tomorrow and take my calculus test." Principal Morrison looked startled. "Madison, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she said firmly. "Because if I run away now, if I hide, then Victoria wins. Then everyone who ever made me feel small wins. But they don't get to win anymore. I'm done being invisible." Sarah's eyes shimmered with tears. "When did you get so brave?" "I've always been brave," Madison said, standing up. "I just didn't know it because I was too busy believing the lies, yours and everyone else's." She looked at her mother, really looked at her, seeing past the suit and the badge to the person underneath. "I'm still angry with you. I don't know if I'm going to forgive you right away. But I understand why you did it, even if I don't agree with it. And I want to try to understand more. That's all I can ask for," Sarah said softly. Olivia stood as well, a genuine smile crossing her usually serious face. "For the record? That was pretty badass. Maybe you should consider following in your mom's footsteps after all." Despite everything, Madison felt a small laugh bubble up. "Let's get through high school first. Then we can talk about careers in federal law enforcement." The walk from Principal Morrison's office to the school entrance felt like traversing a minefield. Students lined the hallways, their whispers following Madison like a physical presence. But this time, Madison didn't keep her eyes on the floor. This time, she walked with her head up, her mother on one side and Olivia on the other, Agent Rodriguez and another agent clearing the path ahead. The whispers were different now. Madison could hear fragments. "Her mom is with the FBI or something. Saw the whole thing, Victoria was crying. Arrested her father right in the middle of a board meeting. She's been in our AP calculus class all year, I never knew." They passed Victoria's usual corner, where her entourage typically held court between classes. The space was empty now. Madison later learned that Victoria had been picked up by her mother shortly after the confrontation, whisked away to deal with the catastrophic implosion of her family's public image. Some part of Madison, a small, quiet part that still remembered being cornered in this very hallway, felt a twinge of something that might have been sympathy. But mostly, she felt free. The main entrance was chaos. True to Olivia's warning, news vans had multiplied like rabbits. Cameras on tripods, reporters with microphones, satellite trucks with their distinctive antennae pointing skyward. It looked like a scene from a movie, not something happening at Madison's school. Agent Rodriguez was speaking into his earpiece, coordinating with the other agents to create a corridor through the crowd. "Director Chen," a reporter called out as soon as they emerged from the building. "Is it true that Richard Ashford attempted to use his daughter to spy on you? Director Chen, can you comment on the allegations against Ashford Industries?" Sarah kept walking, her expression neutral and professional, one hand resting protectively on Madison's shoulder. But she didn't try to shield Madison from the cameras, didn't push her behind the phalanx of agents. She let Madison walk beside her, visible and present. "A statement will be released through proper channels," Sarah said calmly, not breaking stride. "The investigation into Ashford Industries and Richard Ashford is ongoing, and I won't comment on the specifics while the case is active. What I will say is that attempts to intimidate federal officials or their families will always be met with the full force of the law. No one, regardless of their wealth or position, is above that law." "Madison." Another reporter had done their homework quickly. "Madison Chen, how does it feel to know your mother's work led to this situation? Do you feel responsible for Victoria Ashford's father's arrest?" Madison felt her steps falter. That was a question she hadn't expected, a barb that found its mark with surgical precision. Did she feel responsible? Victoria had been awful, yes, but she was still just a kid who'd been manipulated by her father. And now that father was being arrested, their family name dragged through the mud, all because Madison happened to be the wrong person's daughter. Sarah must have felt Madison's hesitation because she squeezed her shoulder gently. But before her mother could say anything, Olivia spoke up, her voice carrying clearly across the parking lot. Madison Chen isn't responsible for Richard Ashford's crimes. Richard Ashford is responsible for Richard Ashford's crimes. He chose to steal classified technology. He chose to attempt witness intimidation. He chose to use his teenage daughter as an unwitting accomplice. Those were his decisions, his actions, and his consequences. Madison is a victim here, not a perpetrator. The reporter opened her mouth to follow up, but Agent Rodriguez had reached the SUV and was opening the door. Sarah guided Madison inside, Olivia sliding in next to her, and then they were sealed away from the noise and the cameras and the questions. The SUV's engine purred to life, and they pulled away from Westbridge Academy with an escort of 2 other vehicles. Madison watched the school recede through the tinted back window. Students were still crowded around the entrance, phones held high, capturing every moment for their social media feeds. By tonight, she'd probably be a trending topic. By tomorrow, her face would be on news websites across the country. The anonymous life her mother had tried so carefully to construct for her was completely, irreversibly destroyed. And yet, I don't have to go back there, do I? Madison asked quietly. To Westbridge. Even if I want to take my calculus test, even if I want to prove something, I could transfer. Start over somewhere else where people don't know. Sarah turned in her seat to face her daughter. You can do whatever you want, sweetheart. Transfer schools, finish the year online, take a semester off to process everything, it's your choice. I've made enough choices for you without asking. I won't make this one too. Madison was quiet for a long moment, watching the familiar streets of her neighborhood pass by. Their apartment building came into view, a modest, anonymous structure that she now knew was carefully chosen for its security features rather than its rent price. Everything she thought she knew about her life had been a careful construction, an elaborate set piece designed to keep her safe. And it had worked, in a way. She'd been safe. But she hadn't been whole. I want to go back, she said finally. Not because I have something to prove to Victoria or Principal Morrison or anyone else. But because I have something to prove to myself. I spent 3 years being small. I want to spend my senior year being exactly as big as I actually am. Sarah's smile was radiant. That's my girl. The apartment looked different when Madison walked through the door. It was the same space she'd lived in for the past 2 years, same beige walls, same generic furniture, same small kitchen with the microwave that only worked if you held the door shut just right. But everything felt different now, like she was seeing it through new eyes. She noticed things she'd never paid attention to before, the subtle security camera disguised as a smoke detector, the reinforced door frame that seemed excessive for a modest apartment building, the way the windows had an almost imperceptible tint that she now realized was probably bulletproof glass. How much of this place is real? Madison asked, setting her backpack down on the couch. The broken microwave, the leaky faucet in the bathroom, the landlord who's always too busy to fix things, is any of that actually true? Sarah loosened her tie and sat down heavily in the armchair. She suddenly looked exhausted, the adrenaline of the confrontation at school wearing off to reveal the weight she'd been carrying. The landlord is a cover identity run by my department. The broken things are deliberate, part of maintaining the image of financial struggle. But the space itself is real. We really live here. I really do make you breakfast in the morning and help you with your homework at night. That part isn't fake, Madison. That's the most real thing in my life. Olivia had taken up a position near the window, her eyes scanning the street below with professional efficiency. I should give you two some privacy, she said. I can wait in the hallway or... No, Madison interrupted. Stay. Please. You've been watching me for weeks, protecting me. I think you've earned the right to hear this conversation too. Besides, you're probably the closest thing I have to an honest friend right now, even if you were being paid to be here. Olivia looked surprised, then touched. For what it's worth, the protection detail was a job. But thinking you're a genuinely good person who deserved better than what Victoria was dishing out? That part wasn't in my briefing. Madison managed a small smile before turning back to her mother. Tell me everything. From the beginning. I want to know who you really are. Sarah took a deep breath. I joined the FBI right out of college, 23 years ago. I was idealistic, angry about injustice, convinced I could make a difference. I specialized in organized crime initially, then moved into corporate espionage and national security threats. I was good at my job, too good, maybe. I made enemies. Powerful ones. And my father? Madison asked. It was a question she'd asked before and never gotten a satisfactory answer to. Her mother always said he'd left when Madison was a baby, that he wasn't in the picture, that it was just the two of them. But Madison had suspected there was more to the story. Sarah's expression became even more guarded. Your father was my partner. FBI agent, like me. We worked cases together, fell in love, got married. When I got pregnant with you, we were both so happy. We thought we could balance the work and family life, that we could keep you safe while still doing the jobs we believed in. What happened to him? Madison's voice was barely above a whisper. He was killed, Sarah said flatly. You were 6 months old. We were investigating a human trafficking ring with connections to several prominent business leaders and politicians. Someone leaked our identities to the organization. They sent a hit squad. Your father died protecting us, protecting you specifically. He held them off long enough for backup to arrive, but he didn't make it. Madison felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. All these years, she'd imagined her father as someone who'd abandoned them, who hadn't cared enough to stay. The reality was somehow worse. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were safer not knowing, Sarah said, her voice cracking slightly. If you knew your father was a fallen agent, if you grew up with that legacy, you'd ask questions. You'd want to follow in his footsteps. You'd make yourself a target by association. So I created a different story. I made us invisible. I became a housekeeper in your mind, just another single mother struggling to make ends meet. I thought that would protect you. You thought wrong, Madison said, but there was less anger in her voice now. More sadness. I spent years thinking I wasn't good enough, that we weren't good enough. Do you know what that does to a person? Believing you're less than everyone around you? I know, Sarah whispered. And I'm so sorry. But Madison, when I look at you now, strong, brave, smart, refusing to be made small, I see your father in you. He wouldn't bow to bullies either. He stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, even when it cost him everything. There was a long silence. Outside, the city hummed with its usual late afternoon energy, traffic sounds, distant sirens, the chatter of neighbors coming home from work. Normal sounds for a normal day, except nothing about this day was normal. What was his name? Madison asked finally. My father. You never told me his name. Sarah smiled, tears running freely down her face now. James. James Chen. He was brilliant and funny and kind. He could diffuse tense situations with a joke, but he was absolutely fearless when it mattered. He would have been so proud of you, Madison. So incredibly proud. Madison felt her own tears starting, years of grief for a father she'd never known she'd lost. I wish I could have known him. He knew you, for 6 months, Sarah said. And he loved you more than anything in this world. The last thing he said before he... She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. They sat in silence for a while, mother and daughter, processing years of secrets and lies and protective deceptions. Olivia remained by the window, giving them space but ready to intervene if needed, though whether for security threats or emotional support, Madison wasn't entirely sure. Finally, Madison wiped her eyes and sat up straighter. What happens now? With Richard Ashford, with Victoria, with everything? Sarah seemed grateful for the shift to more practical matters. She pulled out her phone, swiped through several screens, and then set it on the coffee table. Richard Ashford is being charged with corporate espionage, theft of classified information, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. The evidence against him is substantial. We've been building the case for months. His attempts to use Victoria to gather information about us was just the final piece that gave us probable cause for the arrest. And Victoria? Madison asked. Despite everything, she found herself concerned about the girl who'd made her life miserable. Victoria was cruel, yes, but she was also a kid who'd been manipulated by her father. Does she get charged too? No, Sarah said firmly. Victoria is a minor who was being used by her parent. She didn't know what her father was really asking her to do. She thought she was just making conversation, getting to know the scholarship student. She had no idea she was gathering intelligence for corporate espionage. The legal system recognizes that she's a victim in this situation, even if she was also behaving badly on her own. Olivia spoke up from her position by the window. Victoria's being questioned by child services, though. Her father's arrest, the nature of his crimes, the way he used her, all of that raises concerns about her home environment. Her mother is cooperating fully with authorities, and Victoria will probably need therapy to process everything. Madison thought about that. Victoria Ashford, who'd seemed so untouchable, so perfectly secure in her position at the top of the social hierarchy, was now probably sitting in some sterile office being asked questions by social workers. Her father in jail, her family name in ruins, her entire identity shattered. It was almost enough to make Madison feel sorry for her. Almost. What about school? Madison asked. If I go back tomorrow, what am I walking into? Everyone knows now. Everyone knows about you, about me, about everything. You'll be the subject of gossip, Sarah said honestly. There's no way around that. Some students will be curious, some will be intimidated, some will want to be your friend just because of the drama. But Madison, here's the thing, you get to decide who you are now. Not me, not the cover story I created, not Victoria's bullying or anyone else's opinions. You get to decide. That's terrifying, Madison admitted. It's also liberating, Olivia countered. Trust me, I know what it's like to live under someone else's definition of who you should be. Being able to define yourself? That's power. Madison looked at the young woman who'd been quietly watching over her for weeks. How old are you really? And how did you end up doing this kind of work? Olivia smiled slightly. I'm 19. I graduated high school early, did 2 years of intensive training, and this is my first real field assignment. My parents are both in the service, my father's Secret Service, my mother's CIA. I grew up around this world. I understand the sacrifices it requires, the way it shapes your whole life. That's why I recognized what your mother was trying to do, even if I didn't always agree with her methods. You didn't agree with keeping Madison in the dark? Sarah asked, her eyebrows raised. With all due respect, Director, no, Olivia said carefully. I think Madison deserved to know the truth, or at least a version of it. Being protected is important, but being prepared is important too. And you can't be prepared for threats you don't know exist. Sarah considered this, then nodded slowly. You might be right. In trying to protect Madison from one kind of danger, I left her vulnerable to another, the psychological damage of believing she was less than she was. That's something I'll have to live with. Madison stood up, suddenly feeling restless. She walked to the window where Olivia stood and looked down at the street below. Everything looked normal. People walking dogs, kids riding bikes, someone struggling with grocery bags. Normal life, continuing on despite the fact that Madison's entire world had been turned upside down. I want to know the truth about everything from now on, Madison said, not turning around. No more protective lies. No more cover stories. If there's a threat, I want to know about it. If there's danger, I want to be prepared. I'm not a child anymore, Mom. I'm 17 years old. In less than a year, I'll be legally an adult. I deserve to be treated like one. You're right, Sarah said after a moment. You do. And I promise, no more lies. From now on, we face everything together. The truth, the threats, all of it. As a team. Madison turned around, studying her mother's face. She could see the sincerity there, but also the fear. Sarah was terrified of losing her daughter, terrified that the truth might push Madison away, might make her hate the woman who'd lied to her for so long. And maybe Madison would hate her, for a while. Maybe that was fair. But she was also her father's daughter. James Chen, who'd stood up to threats even when it cost him everything. James Chen, who'd believed in justice enough to die for it. Madison carried that legacy whether she'd known about it or not. Okay, she said finally. We'll face it together. But Mom? I need you to understand something. I'm going back to that school tomorrow, and I'm going to hold my head high. I'm going to take my calculus test and turn in my English paper and sit in that cafeteria where Victoria used to hold court. And I'm not going to hide anymore. Not from her, not from anyone. The next morning arrived with the kind of surreal normalcy that follows life-altering events. Madison woke up to her alarm at 6:30, the same time as always. The sun was filtering through her bedroom curtains in the same way it always did. But when she looked at her phone, she had 347 new messages, mostly from classmates she'd never spoken to before, and her social media notifications had been silenced because there were too many to count. She ignored them all. In the kitchen, her mother was making breakfast, actual breakfast, not the usual quick bowl of cereal or grab granola bar before rushing out the door. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit arranged on the table. Olivia was there too, looking significantly less formal in jeans and a comfortable sweater, though Madison noticed she still had a weapon holstered at her hip. You don't have to come with me, Madison said, pouring herself a glass of orange juice. I mean, the threat is over, right? Richard Ashford is in custody. There's no reason for you to keep up the protection detail. Olivia exchanged a glance with Sarah before answering. The immediate threat is neutralized, yes. But Ashford Industries is a large organization with a lot of moving parts. We can't be certain that Richard was acting alone. Plus, the media attention makes you a different kind of target now. So I'll be staying on for at least another few weeks, until we're sure the situation is stable. Also, Sarah added, Olivia has actually enrolled as a legitimate student at Westbridge. She needs to finish her coursework to maintain her cover for future assignments. So she'll be attending classes regardless. Madison looked at Olivia with new understanding. That's why you knew so much about AP chemistry. You weren't just pretending to be a student, you actually were one. Dual-purpose assignment, Olivia confirmed with a slight smile. Protect you and finish my own education. I'm actually looking forward to taking that calculus test today. I love math. You're both insane, Madison said, but there was affection in her voice. Normal people don't look forward to calculus tests. The drive to Westbridge was quiet. Sarah drove, which was strange in itself. Usually Madison took the bus, saving money that she now knew didn't actually need to be saved. The black SUV from yesterday was gone, replaced by her mother's personal car, a modest sedan that somehow still managed to have bulletproof glass and reinforced panels. As they approached the school, Madison could see that the news vans from yesterday had been replaced by school security and what looked like additional private security personnel. Principal Morrison wasn't taking any chances with media disruption or unwanted visitors. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked, pulling into the parent drop-off area. It's not too late to turn around. We could set up online schooling, or... I'm sure, Madison interrupted. She gathered her backpack, the same worn bag she'd carried for 3 years. She thought about replacing it last night, about showing up with something new and expensive to prove a point. But that would be dishonest in its own way. This bag was hers. She'd earned every scuff mark and broken zipper through her own hard work. Olivia got out first, scanning the area with professional efficiency before nodding to Madison. All clear. Ready? Madison took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Immediately, she felt eyes on her. Students arriving for school stopped mid-conversation to stare. Parents dropping off their kids whispered to each other. Someone dropped their coffee cup, the sound of shattering ceramic loud in the morning air. But Madison didn't duck her head. She didn't make herself small. She walked toward the school entrance with her shoulders back and her chin up, Olivia walking beside her like a friend rather than a bodyguard. The hallway was worse. Everyone stopped what they were doing to watch her pass. Conversations died mid-sentence. Locker doors hung open, forgotten. It was like walking through a freeze frame, every face turned toward her with expressions ranging from awe to fear to calculating interest. Madison made it to her locker, the same small, dented locker she'd had since freshman year, and began the familiar routine of trading out her books. Behind her, she could hear the whispers starting up again, could feel the weight of speculation and gossip. Is it true her mom's like a spy or something? My dad said Richard Ashford might go to prison for 20 years. Victoria hasn't come back to school. I heard she's having a total breakdown. Do you think Madison knew the whole time? Was she, like, undercover too? A throat cleared behind her. Madison turned to find Jennifer Park, captain of the debate team and one of the few students who'd never participated in Victoria's bullying campaigns. Jennifer was clutching her books to her chest, looking nervous but determined. Hey, Madison, Jennifer said. I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. For not standing up for you before. When Victoria was being cruel. I told myself it wasn't my business, that I didn't want to get involved. But that was cowardly. You deserved better from all of us. Madison was so surprised she almost couldn't speak. Oh. Thank you. And if you want to sit with us at lunch today, Jennifer continued, my friends and I would like that. If you want to, I mean. No pressure. I just thought you might want somewhere to sit where people aren't complete assholes. A genuine smile crossed Madison's face, the first real smile since this whole ordeal began. Yeah. I'd like that. Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer walked away, Madison felt something shift inside her. She'd expected hostility or fear or unwanted attention. But kindness? That she hadn't anticipated. Maybe coming back to school wasn't going to be as terrible as she'd thought. The calculus test was exactly as difficult as Madison had expected, but for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't approaching it with the crushing weight of feeling like she had to prove her worth. She worked through the problems methodically, her pencil scratching across the page with confidence. When she finished, 15 minutes before the end of class, she looked up to find Mr. Peterson watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. After class, he asked her to stay behind. Madison, he began, adjusting his glasses nervously, I owe you an apology. Several of us on the faculty have been discussing what happened yesterday, and we realized that we failed you. We saw the way Victoria treated you, the way her group made you feel unwelcome, and we told ourselves that kids will be kids, that you seem to be handling it. But we should have intervened. We should have protected you. Madison felt a lump forming in her throat. Mr. Peterson, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted gently. You're one of the brightest students I've ever taught. Your understanding of advanced mathematics is exceptional. But more than that, you've shown remarkable resilience and character. You came to school today when most people would have hidden at home. That takes courage. And I want you to know that things are going to be different from now on. Principal Morrison has already implemented new anti-bullying protocols. There will be real consequences for harassment. You have my word. Madison nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying. She gathered her things and headed to her next class, where similar conversations played out with other teachers. By lunch, she was emotionally exhausted but also feeling something she hadn't felt in years, hope. The cafeteria was its usual chaos of noise and social dynamics, but the atmosphere shifted noticeably when Madison entered with Olivia beside her. Conversations paused. Heads turned. But this time, Madison didn't try to make herself invisible. She spotted Jennifer and her friends at a table near the windows and walked over with purpose. "Room for 2 more?" Madison asked. Jennifer's face lit up. "Absolutely. Everyone, this is Madison, though I guess you all know that already. And this is Olivia," Olivia supplied, sliding into a seat. "I'm new. Well, newer. I've been here a few weeks." The lunch period passed more quickly than Madison expected. Jennifer's friends, David, Maria, and Sophie, were genuinely kind, asking questions that were curious rather than invasive, sharing their own stories and interests. David was passionate about environmental science. Maria was learning the code and building her own video game. Sophie wrote poetry and had just been accepted to a prestigious summer writing program. These were people with substance, Madison realized. People who'd been at this school all along, living their own lives, pursuing their own interests. She'd been so focused on avoiding Victoria's cruelty that she'd never noticed the other social ecosystems thriving in the shadows of the popular crowd's drama. "So what's the deal with Victoria?" Sophie asked eventually, lowering her voice. "Is she coming back?" Madison shrugged. "I don't know. I hope she gets help, honestly. What her father did to her, using her like that, it's messed up. She needs therapy, probably. And maybe some time away from all of this." "That's really mature of you," Maria said, looking impressed. "If someone had treated me the way she treated you, I don't think I'd be nearly as generous." "I'm not being generous," Madison said. "I'm being honest. Victoria was cruel, and she made choices to be cruel. But she was also being manipulated by someone she trusted. Both things can be true. I can acknowledge that she's a victim of her father's actions while still holding her accountable for her own behavior." Olivia nodded approvingly. "That's a very nuanced perspective." The rest of the day followed a similar pattern. Some students approached Madison with genuine warmth and apologies. Others kept their distance, uncertain how to navigate this new social landscape. A few, mostly friends of Victoria's, shot her hostile looks, but no one dared to actually confront her. The presence of Olivia, plus the knowledge of who Madison's mother really was, had created a protective barrier that no amount of social status could penetrate. By the time the final bell rang, Madison was exhausted but satisfied. She'd survived. More than that, she'd thrived. She'd taken her test, participated in class discussions, made new friends, and proven to herself that she belonged at Westbridge Academy not because of a fake scholarship or her mother's real job, but because of her own merit. Sarah was waiting in the pickup area, and this time she got out of the car to greet Madison with a tight hug. "How was it?" "Hard," Madison admitted. "But good. Really good, actually." On the drive home, Madison's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it cautiously, then felt her breath catch. It was from Victoria. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just for yesterday, but for everything. For 3 years of making you feel small when you were always bigger than me in every way that matters. My therapist says I need to take accountability for my actions, and she's right. What my dad did was wrong, but what I did was wrong too. I chose to be cruel. I chose to make you a target. And I'm sorry. I hope someday you can be happy, because you deserve that. You always did." Madison stared at the message for a long time. Then, slowly, she typed a response. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you find peace, Victoria. I really do." She hit send, then turned off her phone and looked out the window at the city passing by. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more media attention, more questions, more adjustments to this new reality where her mother's real identity was public knowledge. But tonight, for the first time in as long as she could remember, Madison felt like she could breathe. "Mom," she said quietly. "Yes, sweetheart? Tell me more about Dad. About James." I want to know everything, the big things and the small things. His favorite food, the jokes he used to tell, the way he liked his coffee. All of it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. He liked his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar cube. He said 2 was too sweet and none was too bitter, but 1 was perfect. He had terrible handwriting, doctor's handwriting. I used to tease him, even though he wasn't a doctor. He loved old movies, especially film noir. He would quote Humphrey Bogart at the most random times. And he sang to you every night before bed, even though he was completely tone deaf. Made up his own lullabies that didn't rhyme or make any sense. You'd fall asleep laughing. Madison listened, hungry for every detail, every memory. She was building a picture of the father she'd never known, the man whose courage and sacrifice had shaped her entire life without her realizing it. I think I'd like to visit his grave, she said. If that's okay. I'd like to talk to him, tell him about what happened. Tell him that I stood up for myself, just like he would have wanted. He'd be so proud of you, Madison. So incredibly proud. As they pulled into their apartment building, the modest, carefully selected apartment that had been both a sanctuary and a prison, Madison felt something settle inside her. She wasn't the shy scholarship girl anymore. She wasn't just the daughter of a federal director. She was Madison Chen, daughter of James and Sarah, survivor, fighter, and whatever else she decided to be. The future stretched ahead of her, uncertain but full of possibility. And for the first time in 3 years, Madison was ready to face it head-on. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.